You may think that AI is making software teams faster, which it does, but speed without confidence creates a new kind of risk. Yes, the code ships sooner, but the quality signals arrive later, so you don't even know about the quality of your code. SmartBear is betting on autonomous testing that it can close that gap between shipping the software and, of course, the quality analysis. And today we have with us once again Dan Faulkner, CEO of SmartBear, to dig into what that means for modern QA. Dan, first of all, it's great to have you back on the show.
Great to be back, Swapnil. Thanks for having me.
It's been a while since you and I talked, and last time when we talked, we did not even touch about AI. We did not have any clue what is going on in this world. So I would like to remind our viewers what SmartBear is all about in the context of AI and the discussion we are going to have today.
AI certainly has moved very quickly and completely changed how we talk about, think about software development. SmartBear is a company that is focused on application level testing, meaning testing above the waterline of the code, and about API lifecycle management. So two very, very relevant things in the AI impacted SDLC. Agents talk to APIs, and keeping up your QA practice with the increased velocity that AI code gen has enabled is one of the major issues facing the market today. So we feel like we're in two of the hot points of the AI SDLC.
So true, and I cover open source a lot, and in past there was kind of complaints that there's not enough code contribution, there's not enough people looking at the code for security, though Linus would say that, given enough bugs, all bugs are shallow. And now the complaint is that there's too much code contribution coming in because of AI. Some companies even actually change the license because they cannot tackle with that. If I ask you, as AI starts to compress development cycle, people can quickly code and also they can find the bugs. There is a kind of bigger, as you touched upon, struggle, challenge. Now, it can be seen as challenge, it can be seen as opportunity. What are you seeing happening to traditional QA teams because the amount of code that is being generated through AI assistants? And do you see that companies are prepared for that? I doubt they are. But let's just first try to get the state of QA because of AI. Then we'll see what else can be done here.
Yeah, well, we recently conducted quite a large survey, and 92% of the enterprises who responded to that survey told us that they had what's a hybrid approach to QA for their applications, meaning they're using some automation, but 92% of them were still using manual testing as part of their process. And so the vast majority of organizations continue to use manual testing. And at the same time, even before AI, nobody felt like they were doing as much testing as they would like to. There's always a trade-off between velocity requirements. I've got to get this thing out there in the wild and into the hands of my customers, and coverage. So very few companies actually were achieving the coverage goals, functional coverage goals, that they wanted to with their testing strategies. So now AI code gen has been adopted by almost everybody. 93% of the people in our survey said they were using AI code gen. And that has massively accelerated one leg of the SDLC. It's massively accelerated the creation of code. So we have essentially created an even bigger bottleneck in the quality department. And that's really the problem that SmartBear is trying to address. Make sure you don't have to forego all of the velocity benefits that you achieved with AI code gen by having to have this big bottleneck in QA.
And when we look at QA, it's also true that a lot of teams, they have their own homegrown testing stacks, DIY quality workflow. Now, when you bring AI-driven development environment, what happened to those approaches? Because I don't know if they can keep up, and they may not even have the kind of expertise you folks have to keep up with that. So, talk a bit about how these DIY or homegrown testing solutions fail to sustain as teams scale, and then what SmartBear can do to help them.
What happens frequently is people will use an open source solution, a Selenium, a Playwright, something like that. And you can do a lot with an SDET and those scripts. The challenge with them is that script-based testing tends to be brittle. And so people often find that rather than increasing their functional coverage, they tend to go back and just have to rebuild the tests because every time the application is updated. The second is they don't have memory. So you actually need a repository of your tests that shows the evolution of the test suite over time, so that you're not kind of starting from scratch every time. So the combination of brittleness and a lack of memory in open source solutions really just renders those as not adequate for solving the whole problem in an AI-enabled lifecycle. So we're not here to say that nobody should ever use script-based testing, but it's not going to solve the problem that the increased velocity of AI code gen poses for us. So what I would say is if you're using it, you can keep using it for what you've got. Similarly, if you're using lots of manual testing, you can absolutely keep using your manual testers. But the gap between what you want to cover and what's really being covered, that can't be solved by more scripts, and it can't be solved by throwing people at the problem because it would require an impossible amount of hiring. And so that's where our autonomous testing solution, BearQ, fits in. We're essentially saying we will help you keep pace with the accelerated AI code gen and enable you to fill the gap that the AI code gen bottleneck creates in your quality coverage.
When we talk about BearQ, how is it fundamentally different from traditional automation model that most teams already know or use? And if possible, if you can just also walk us through how does it work in their existing setup?
So BearQ is a completely different approach to quality. We view it as the agentic analog to AI code generation and agentic code generation. What BearQ is literally is an always-on set of QA teammates. So the minimum unit in BearQ is a team of 4 agents. There's one agent that autonomously explores your application. You just give it credentials. It will learn how your application works and understand what your application is intended to do. And it builds an understanding of your application, a very thorough understanding. A second agent creates a testing strategy and a set of test cases from the knowledge that the exploration agent has gleaned. And then there's a test execution agent, which actually runs the tests. And they're all managed by an orchestration agent. Just like a QA team has a QA manager, there's this orchestration agent that keeps them in sync. So what that enables this little team of agents to do is keep pace at any scale and velocity that you want to with your application, fill in all the functional coverage gaps that you have, and every time your application is changed, automatically update the knowledge about the application, retire the tests that no longer make sense, add new tests that are needed, self-heal tests that need self-healing. And so it's just a fundamentally different approach because all the other approaches, script-based, using low-code, no-code testing tools or manual testing, are all predicated on the idea of a person sitting in front of a GUI and interacting with the application. That is not what happens with BearQ. BearQ runs fully autonomously and actually just prepares reports and data for our customers that say, here's what I've done. So it can fit in with and absorb the tests that you already have. Or if you want to start from scratch, it can start from scratch.
I want to talk about governance a bit, because when we are making systems more autonomous, because as AI systems being operating with greater autonomy, and you just mentioned, that you don't need humans sitting in front of GUI, how do you balance the scale that they need, speed that they need, with the need for human oversight? Because we all know that I'm a heavy user of AI. You cannot trust it blindly. It can hallucinate. And no matter how strong your prompt engineering is, it might do things that you don't want. We have to worry about policy control, standards, and if someone is operating in regulated industries, then it's even more required. So talk a bit about the whole human in loop, maintaining speed with policies, compliance.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a very important point for all enterprises, but especially anyone who's got a regulatory angle to their compliance needs. So there's a few different aspects of governance. First, we'll kind of take them in reverse order. The human in the loop is absolutely required. You cannot run an AI SDLC as a black box. So BearQ always shows its work. It will prepare summary reports, but it's possible for people to drill in to any level of detail that they want to see how it's made its decisions, and it shows its work. A second point of governance that you've raised, which is something that, frankly, I don't think is getting enough coverage, is this notion of intent validation. So when you are doing prompt engineering and you're driving code generation at the prompt level, and power users of Claude Code and Codex are now working with no IDE. They're just having discussions with these agents. How do you validate that what has been written is everything that you asked for and nothing you didn't ask for? This notion of intent validation, has it really built what I wanted, is very, very important. And even the frontier models have a propensity to hallucinate, to ignore certain instructions, to add some stuff in because they're trying to be helpful that maybe you didn't ask for. So it's very, very important that we actually validate the thing that comes out the back end of a code gen system is exactly what you wanted. And BearQ can really help there because it explores the application autonomously and builds this knowledge representation of what's really been built. And then the tests reflect what's really been built. So it's a great way to validate that what has come out is really what you wanted. And we think that that's a super important part of the governance story as well.
You earlier also mentioned your survey, and your recent survey found that 70%, if the numbers are correct, of software experts say that application quality is already suffering, and around 68% worry that faster AI development will create testing bottleneck. At times, actually, it's easier to write the code than to audit and edit it. In such an environment, what does application integrity really mean? And when you said that you can add validation, unless we have a benchmark, what are we validating against?
Yeah. So first, I'll talk about what we mean when we say application integrity. Our notion is that as both the velocity of coding increases and the abstraction of coding increases, that the integrity of applications will start to break down. And what we mean by the integrity is, does it work and does it do what you want it to do? So when we strive for application integrity, we are seeking to have the assurance that our application just works as intended, and to have that continuous assurance. Because if the application is being iterated on time and time and time again, multiple times, huge amounts of code churn and rewrites, we need to know continuously that it works and it's doing what we intended. With respect to the validation, we're not trying to validate against a benchmark. We're trying to enable our customers to validate that the code and the application that has come out of the AI coding agent is actually what they intended. So we're validating the functionality is what the end user intended, the developer intended the application to do.
What are the risks, if organizations don't close this gap that we talked about and we have been talking about? What is truly at stake from a business, customer, and operational standpoint? We are not just talking about the velocity and, we're not talking about at the code level. We're talking about the business level where you can lose revenues or your image as well.
The risk of not closing the gap are essentially a massive amplification of the risks that have always been there. So there are two types of business risk that an organization faces when they're deciding to release their application or the new version of their application. The first thing they have to do is say, well, if I release this and I haven't tested it fully, what's the probability and the impact of an error for us? Now, that could be lost revenue, brand reputation damage, lost customers. It could be a regulatory fine. They have to balance the desire to avoid those downsides against speed. So they can't just hold their application internally forever. They've got to get the thing out there so people can actually use it. And so they've constantly been making this trade-off. Now, that trade-off was difficult before AI came around. Right now, they are generating all of these improvements in the application faster than they ever have, or they're creating brand new applications faster than they ever have. And it's become much harder for them to actually answer that question. There's this pileup of new capabilities that they want to get out to the market, but they just don't have the capacity to test it properly. So you will either find delays that they don't feel like they can live with. They'll give back all of the velocity gains that they got from the code generation, or they're going to have to take bigger risks and deploy untested software. And I just don't see that happening.
And let's assume that there are teams who are watching this discussion right now. What are some of the earliest warning signals that their current QA strategy isn't built, that they can see, which tells them that their existing QA strategy isn't built for AI speed development? What are those signals?
Well, it would be time pressure. Are they getting pressure from the business to move application releases out more quickly? And if they find that that's worsening as AI code gen is speeding things up, then they're certainly going to have to make adjustments. And most companies will not allow them to go and hire endlessly to fill that gap. The second issue, and this is something that the market is seeing, is a reduction in quality. More bugs escaping into the wild. And that's where people are starting to see, that's what we mean when we say the integrity of the application starts to break down. The quality that their customer base is used to degrades because there's so much time pressure to get the application out and there's not the capacity to deal with it.
And if there are organizations, if there are organizations who do want to move towards agentic testing without disrupting delivery, what is the first practical step you would recommend them? Of course, they can use SmartBear, but what are the practical steps you're like, this is how you should get ready? Even if you use SmartBear, you need to do some homework as well.
Yeah, I would actually just do a survey, do an audit of where you are currently. So we think about testing in a few different ways. There's code level testing. So your unit tests and all of the stuff that essentially what it really does is tests the code in isolation, tells you that the unit test does, a function does what it's meant to do. It tells you that the code is clean. So you've got that, and actually the AI code gen tools are pretty good at that. Next, you've got to think about your application, your end-to-end testing, your performance testing. your cross-browser testing and real device testing, if you're doing, if you're deploying your application across different operating systems and different endpoints, and just be honest about, well, what kind of coverage do we have today? And who's doing it? Are we using tools? Are we using people? And get an honest sense of your level of comfort, and recognize that you built that system for a pre-Claude Code / Codex world. And you are now in a post-Claude Code and Codex world. So you will need a new strategy to keep pace and to maintain the integrity of your applications. And I would say you don't have to throw away the work that you've done. You don't have to get rid of the people that you have. But you do need to address that bottleneck. And that's where we think agentic testing and autonomous testing will come into play.
And how do you work with your customers? Is it like turnkey solution? They go up, they sign up, or you actually work closely, or it depends on the size of the organization?
No, I mean, right now we're in an early access phase. So we're kind of doing hands-on deployment. But our goal is that by the summer, as soon as possible, but by the summer, this will be a fully self-service and self-onboarding application. You really just need to give BearQ an account and credentials, and it will do the rest.
And if I just ask you, forget about SmartBear for a second. If I ask Dan, how do you see this whole evolution of AI, software development, quality testing? How do you look at this whole situation right now, where you're like happy, you're like, oh, this is troubling, or I just want to hear your opinion.
It's chaos. People are rushing to adopt a technology in ways that in prior generations would have been viewed as cavalier. There's a tremendous amount of top-down pressure from boards to just do something with AI. There are pieces of IT budget being preserved as long as it's AI, without really understanding what the outcomes of that will be. If we think about the SDLC as a set of discrete tasks, whether you're doing agile or waterfall or anything in between, there's really a set of discrete tasks. You've got to figure out what you want to build, specify it, code it, review it, test the compiled application in all of those environments. You've got to make sure that it's secure and it's following privacy regulations. Then it's got to be deployed and monitored. Only one of those areas in the SDLC has had this massive boost in acceleration from AI, and that is the writing of the code itself. Every other step of the SDLC has to catch up, and there's going to be a lot of change and churn and expensive mistakes and surprising successes. So the world is all learning together at the fastest rate of adoption I've ever seen in technology.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us and sharing these insights. I really appreciate the conversation, your take on where we are with AI, of course, quality, software development, speed. Thank you so much for all these great insights, and I would love to have you back on the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swapnil. Great to talk to you.